Welcome to the Day with Friday. My name is Michael Olschimke. I'm the CEO of Scalefree. Yeah, quite unusual setting today, but yeah, so be it. Doesn't matter. The question is good today. We run the session here today, every week essentially, to allow you, the audience, to ask questions about data vaults, data-driven applications, cloud computing, MVP stuff. That's all good questions essentially. And you can use the chat here if you want. If you want to raise a live question, essentially, you can use the Q&A function here. You can raise your hand if you want, and I give you a voice, and you can raise your question. Or you can use a form, which I show you after today's session. I show the link where you can essentially submit your questions for the next session. And I have a question here from the audience. Let me just share my screen here real quick. And it's essentially about depend child links with status tracking. So the idea is, let me just quickly read this. So they get a source with multiple records for one business key. So they get multi-active data essentially. And they identify the depend child key. So I assume they're looking at something like line items, for example, or some sub-components to a bigger thing. Seats in an airplane, sites in the pages in the book, for example, and so on. So they got a depend child key. It's not like multi-active data when you just got multiple descriptions, phone numbers, for example, for a contact, which I would model differently, right? And they got the problem now that they have essentially the need to track deleted records. And deleted records here on a line item basis, not on the overall basis. So you could essentially modify, let's say let's assume this is an opportunity, or yeah, opportunity. In opportunity, you have multiple line items, and they want to remove one of the line items, but not the whole opportunity. That's my understanding. Again, if this is more like multi-active data, multiple active descriptions for the same business key, I might do a different model. I would use a essentially multi-active satellite, and in multi-active satellites would keep track of changes group-wise in the satellite. But here, let's assume this is a depend child key for real, which I don't 100% know. They got a depend child key like a line item number in an invoice or in an opportunity. And how do they keep track of these changes? Now, there's two options what you could do. Let me start with the bad one, or it's okay, it's valid, but it will be inperformant. Yeah, what you could do is, let me just share my whiteboard here. Well, let's do it here. So what you could have is, let's say you have a hub for the order, a hub for the opportunity, let's say, and then a hub for the customer and maybe something else, right? And then you have a dependent child link in the center. And this one includes some line item number. Refers to both hubs. That's a basic design essentially. And what you could do is to add a status tracking satellite, or I like to call them FAT satellites, just to keep it a bit simpler. You could add the satellite to the link structure itself. And then the thing is, the depend child link, because it includes the line item number, has the granularity of all the incoming line items. So for every line item, there will be a record in the depend child link. And to this record, you get a unique hash key, because that's your primary key in the link, right? The hash key is computed from the opportunity ID, from the customer number, and from the line item number. So that's your unique hash key. And that hash key you're describing in your satellite. So that way you could deactivate using a deleted date, for example, deleted DDTS, deleted date timestamp. You could remove or soft delete a line item essentially. But then the problem what you're facing is that when you produce your facts, you have to join the satellite all the time, right? You have to join it to know which of the line items are still current and which ones are outdated. And from my experience, at least, might be different in your specific scenario, but from my experiences, when you modify a line item, all the other line, let's say you remove line item number 2, all the subsequent line items will shift upwards, right? So 3 becomes 2, 4 becomes 3, and so on. So on a deletion of one single line item, there will be lots of changes on these records. And those changes you have to keep track of somehow as well, right? When the line item changes. So the idea now is that we're using a design very similar to what we use in non-historized links, what we call technical counter transactions. And the idea is this. What you do is you add the records to the depend child link as usual, right? So let's say you have a customer, one second. So there's customer involved. There's a product involved. No, let's say opportunity. It's better. Opportunity. And then you have a So opportunity, then we set a line item number. That's a line. And some dollar value. Should be sufficient. And let's add the LDTS, the load date timestamp, and some transaction date as well, just for good sake. Okay. So let's say we receive 2 line items for the opportunity in the first day, right? So it's both for customer 1, opportunity 1, and then the line item is 1, 2. The value is $5 and $6 or euros, and it's all coming in on day 1 for a transaction on day 1, right? That's the first step. And then on the second day, you realize there's a change. They added another line item, right? And in the same manner as we do it for the non-business links, for the technical current transactions, you have to get rid of the old fact first and then insert the new fact. So get rid of the old fact means essentially make sure that you, on the same dimensions, 1, 1, line item 1, 2, I'm getting rid of the dollar values here. So I can later, for the same transaction, but on the next day, essentially. So that's my next day. And then with that in mind, I can essentially aggregate the data. And now essentially when I aggregate the data for this opportunity, there's no data anymore. So I have to add the new fact as well. So 1, 1, 1, same opportunity. So I said I'm adding a new line item here. So 5, 6, and 9. Day 2, day 2, day 2. For a transaction on day 1, day 1, day 1. Yep. So that's how we deal with this essentially. So it's also group-wise, very similar to a multi-axis satellite, but group-wise on the line items. And that's the most efficient way, essentially. What I wouldn't do is, because of these changes, as I just said, when you remove a line item, my guess is that there will be a lot of changes to the subsequent line items as well. I wouldn't remove just the delta, it's too expensive. Just adding the new line item, for example, that's typically more complicated to load actually. Also just tracking a delta, let's say what if the line item 1's value changes from 5 euros to 9 euros or 10 euros, let's say. You could just track an additional $5, but it's also too complicated to calculate. So you just always get rid of the old facts and insert the new facts, at least on the opportunity level, or the key level here, opportunity and customer essentially. That's how we deal with this. And then when you get rid of the old opportunity with all the line items, add the new opportunity with all the line items, you always know by aggregating the data until the date you want to analyze, day 2 here in this case, on a load date time frame, on a load date timeline, then you essentially know the state of your line items across all the opportunities day by day, essentially. What was the truth every day? And it's more efficient because that way, even though it looks a bit inefficient, but here's the thing. These data sets you put in a column-based storage in the best case, and the aggregations will be super fast. And the joins on these data sets would be too slow. And you want to avoid the join these data sets because they are large and you want to avoid the join here. That's why. So avoid the join of the effective satellite or status tracking satellite. Add the technical counter transactions to the dependent chart link, and then just aggregate the data when you provide your facts. That's the most efficient approach, essentially, for dealing with this. Okay. And then you could now come up with the same idea. What if a line item gets deleted, right? So in this case, let me just come up with, let's maybe clean this part here. So let's say I have on customer 1, that's the 1 here, opportunity 1, line item 1 and 2, 5 and 6, day 1, day 1, day 1, day 1. And on the next day, the line item gets deleted, so get rid of the old facts into the new ones. And then add the new ones. 1. So line item number, let's say 1 gets deleted, right? To make it more complicated. So we still, after the deletion of the line item number 1, I assume the second line item gets shifted, right? So this becomes the new one. 6 euros, day 2 still, day 1. Okay, so that would be the new truth essentially. And to distinguish now, what if an opportunity here gets deleted completely, right? How do you distinguish this from cases where the value of the line items on all the line items results to 0, right? You can't just count the numbers here and say, well, if this is 0, must be deleted, right? Because of freebies, that kind of stuff. So that doesn't work. So what we do is we use a counter column, or I call this X because I used C for custom already. So I call this X, a counter column, where we essentially calculate or define if this record came from the source or if it's a technical counter transaction. And if it comes from the source, you add a number 1. If it's a technical counter transaction, you add a -1, not a 0, a -1. And then when you count these numbers, you know how many line items are behind all these records on day 2, for example. On day 1, you know it's 2 line items. That's the sum. But on day 2, when I count until here for day 2, right? If I count these numbers, I get 1 line item. And that's the truth. It's for customer 1 on the opportunity 1, I have 1 line item on day 2, right? And that's why I know if an opportunity has no line items anymore, and you might consider this as being deleted for the opportunity if you don't have an opportunity link, which I would have essentially to know for sure. So, but it's the idea. So have this counter column so you know how many line items are behind all your records for deletion detection if a line item got deleted or if a opportunity has no line items anymore. That's the basic idea. All right, and that's how I would implement this, and that's the fastest approach essentially. If you have a question like this, use this form here, https://sfr.ee/dbfriday. That's where you find essentially an online form where you can submit your questions, upload some images if you want from your whiteboard or team if you want, and then yeah, I'll schedule them in essentially depending on my mood. There's no guarantee I'll answer all the questions, right? But I try to answer as many as I can essentially. Make sure it fits on a good HD resolution, right? Don't send us these super large models to review or something. That doesn't work here on the screen. And then there's also more webinars. So check out scalefree.to/webinars, where you also find 2 webinars on Warescape and on DBT at the moment. And if you have more questions that you want to, where you can't wait until Friday, you can also join the Data Vault Innovators community that we set up with Ignition Data in Australia. And that's essentially a forum where you can submit questions, chat with other people, and receive answers essentially from the Scalefree team, from the Ignition Data team, much faster typically. But also other materials, solutions, and so on. It's more and more coming up. All right. So sorry for the hiccup today. Hope you enjoyed still and learn something, and yeah, and enjoy your weekend, and hope for you to see you next Friday again. Same time, same spot. Cool. Thank you, guys.